Right. The name of my weekly class, it's called the Super Easy Beginner Women's Ninja Class. And I just named it that because every time I would talk to women about coming to do Ninja Warrior, they're immediately way too intimidated and scared to even think of coming. And like everyone thinks they're going to be the worst one in the class and they're terrified of embarrassing themselves. But I feel like naming it that gets them in there.
Hey, welcome to the Ninjababes podcast. Today I'm here with Brett and Grace Sims, and this is only like the second time ever that a dude is on the podcast.
Oh,
So, wow.
I feel honored.
Whoa, you're making history over there.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I'm super excited to continue our topics about gender differences in Ninja Warrior. And if you have been keeping up to date with all of our episodes so far, last week we had a survey go out that was just gathering more information about our perspectives within the Ninja Warrior community. I'm not going to go into a lot of those questions and perspectives right now. Today, we're just going to focus on hearing what some veteran ninjas in our community have to say about coaching girls, training together, girls and guys, and what it's looked like in competition and in their gym, and just their awesome perspective, because Grace and Brett definitely are, in my eyes, some veterans with a lot of wisdom. And so I'm just excited to talk to you guys today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we're excited to give some input.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'll say right off the bat, our gym is very new, and I personally don't have a ton of coaching experience, but Brett has coached gymnastics, parkour, and ninja at several gyms, so he's definitely the more veteran coach than I am. And we've only been coaching at our gym now for about 2 months, but we seem to have a lot of girls in our gym so far. Almost half of our class members are girls, which is really awesome, and I don't remember seeing that at some of the other gyms that we've been to that he's coached at. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Could you just both explain how long have you been involved with Ninja Warrior and what does that look like for you both?
Oh, man. All right. So I've been involved basically from the beginning of American Ninja Warrior. So as most people know who are listening to this, it started in Japan with Sasuke. And in season 19, which was 2007, that was my first experience with Ninja Warrior. And it was in Japan on their course. And from there, I just kind of stuck with it. I did miss a season or two. I kind of forget which one it is because I've been doing it a while.
5 and 7.
5 and 7. Sounds right. But yeah, I just, it slowly became more and more of my life. You know, at first it was just a really exciting hobby, and it evolved more and more. It became my job. And then, you know, I met Grace through Ninja Warrior. So yeah, it's really, my whole life is
taken over your life.
Yeah, it's everything now, kind of.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually didn't realize that your first season was over in Japan. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And that was before American Ninja Warrior
Right.
existed. So then after, you competed in Japan twice, right? Before American Ninja Warrior season 1 here.
Right. Season 19 and 20 of Sasuke. That was my first 2 times. And, you know, things were a lot different back then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've changed so much in the American version. But of course, there wasn't a backyard course in the country at that point. So everything was so new.
Yo, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And then Grace, how did you guys, you met in Ninja, but did you get started with Ninja because you met Brett?
No, I actually was a rock climber for a long time, and I was living in a different state from Brett and hadn't met him or anything, but I started, I don't know, it was a bit weird how I got started on the show. I'd never seen it before, and a producer, I guess, reached out to a climbing gym that I used to go to in North Carolina. And the producers, I guess, were looking for more strong females for the Southeast region because they didn't have enough that applied, or they weren't happy with who applied. And so the climbing gym recommended me, and I was like, oh, cool. I guess I'll submit a video to this TV show I've never seen. And then I didn't get picked that year, but I kind of started following the show a little bit and applied again the next year and got picked. And then from there, I competed every season since. So that season was season 7 was my first one competing. And then I did the Team Ninja Warrior, Ninja versus Ninja on those 3 seasons too. So that was really fun.
That's so fun.
And then, yeah, I just met Brett, I think my first year. So yeah, we met in season 7 down in Atlanta at like a little local competition and kind of hung out in Orlando during season 7. And then really shortly after that, like a couple months later, I moved 2 states away to Georgia to like date Brett. And then with like, I think 7 months later, we were married.
Oh my goodness.
And that was almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago. So
I love it.
It's been a wild ride.
I always love people's ninja origin stories, but this one's even better because it's like a couple and then you get married, and how great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can I just say, like, I have loved witnessing like your living situations over time.
Oh Lord. I know.
Well, it's entertaining, at
Yeah.
least for most people.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Definitely
sure.
entertaining. Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like I can do anything home improvement because I watch your videos, which clearly doesn't mean I'm educated
Nice.
enough to know, but it just
I'm not either. We just make it up as we go. We're like, oh, I wonder if we can do this. Let's
Yeah, I
Google
mean,
it.
YouTube is so huge right now, and
Oh yeah.
I always think about it like, hey, if someone else can do this, they figured out how to do it. Like, why couldn't we do it? And
Especially if we're
yeah,
learning from them. So
right.
yeah, I mean, we've done way more in this house than I would have imagined when we first bought it. But it's everything's gone pretty successful so far.
yeah, we don't have a kitchen still, and one room doesn't have a floor at all, but it's pretty good
But you
otherwise.
got a lot
Yeah.
of cliffhangers and
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
we lack in kitchen, we make up in obstacles. So
Yeah.
that's so good. Well, I'm so glad that both of you are here. And Grace, I know that you had mentioned you don't have as much coaching experience as Brett, but I still
Mhm.
feel like you've seen the progression of our sport so far. Like you've seen how everything's going. And so as an observer and someone who's involved, but someone who's also just like in the midst of it, I still appreciate your
Mhm.
perspective.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks. I've done just like some women's workshops. So like, and I coach a weekly women's class.
Hmm.
And not like I feel like I couldn't coach both genders, but I'm really excited to try to get the older generation of
Hmm.
women who really lack confidence, like in the gym. And
Yeah.
so that's sort of been my passion so far, and really all the classes that I've taught so far.
yeah, we'll tell her the name of your
Oh,
class.
right. The name of my weekly class, and this is not to belittle women at all, but it's just to get literally just to get people in the door. It's called the Super Easy Beginner Women's Ninja
Oh my
Class.
God.
And I just named it that because every time I would talk to women about coming to do Ninja Warrior, they're immediately way too
Yeah.
intimidated and scared to even think of coming. And they're like, well, I can't even do a pull up, And so like in the class description, it's like, this is for women who like can't do a pull up, who are starting from scratch. And like everyone thinks they're going to be the worst one in the class and they're terrified of embarrassing themselves. But I feel like naming it that gets them in there.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I hope that no one thinks that it's
No,
belittling, but it's working so far.
that's really funny. No, as soon as you said it, I was like, that's funny. And then my next thought was like, that makes sense because literally when I've talked to women who are older than me or like much older than me, I will hear that same reaction, like, oh, I could never do that. What you guys do is so hard.
Yeah. And then when you say the
Yeah.
name of the class, and they're like, oh, well, maybe I can come to that class. And then they do, and it's a really good time.
That's amazing. So what has been then, what are you doing now, first of all? I know that you mentioned like teaching classes, but you own the gym that you're at, right? Or you just opened it?
Yeah, we started planning. Well, we're co-owners. There's two other owners, so there's four of us partners, and we started planning roughly 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, and we started really building out the building last October. We were ready to open in March, and then the pandemic hit, and we had to delay. So we actually just opened in June of this year.
Yeah, COVID. So then what has been your coaching experience then? And if Brett wants to take over at this point, talking about like what has been your experience at the gym now, but I know you had experience before that as well. So if you just want to give a background of what your coaching experience has looked like.
Sure, yeah. I think I kind of fell into coaching initially. I started my ninja journey about the same time I got into like parkour and free running, when the internet kind of started blowing up on YouTube with all the parkour videos. And once I got to a point where I needed to learn some of the more advanced tricks, I realized I was going to need a little bit safer environment to go for some stuff. So I found a local gymnastics place. They let me come in, kind of play around. And I got to a point where I was doing some stuff that I was pretty proud that I figured out. And I said, hey, can I start teaching this? And they said, sure, we'll give it a shot. So I was pretty grateful that that place kind of took a risk and let me just start coaching something that was unfamiliar to them. And it ended up working out great. That was, I don't know, like 7 years ago or something. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Um, and the program's still running today with some different coaches now. But that's how I initially started. And I was teaching parkour, kind of making it up as I go. And then they asked me to start teaching gymnastics. So I kind of got a crash course in basics for gymnastics. And then from there, there were some other odd jobs in the middle. I did some random construction jobs. And then a few years later, I picked back up at Ninja Quest when their gym was starting. And I helped kind of build their parkour program, and then slowly started working with some of the ninja kids as they started building ninja obstacles. It was actually more of a parkour gym when it started, and then we slowly added the ninja obstacles. And I don't know what year that was either. I have a really bad
2015.
sense of like time.
Yeah,
And,
you do.
yeah, but
2015, and that's when like Vance and Brooks were there for,
yeah. I had a few kids there that I coached, and some of them went on to do like A&W Junior and that kind of stuff. So that was cool to see that, as a lot of other coaches have experienced now. But yeah, all that stuff kind of led into our new gym, and writing the curriculum for that has been a process. I don't know. I have a lot of weird experience where I've had to make stuff up.
Well, there's not really been a standard for how to coach ninja because, like you said, Kara,
Right.
It's so new. And I'll say from just an outsider's perspective, watching Brett coach and write the curriculum for his program, it's like there's no textbook yet for how to teach. It's so different from gymnastics or something where you're like, okay, you're going to learn these skills and this is going to get you to be this elite athlete, and you can get this point system if you compete in this way. It's not really like that at all. And so Brett's basically like trying to figure out what are the most fundamental skills. What's my level 1 class going to include? What would level 2 look like? How do you take things to a next level, and
Right, of course.
stuff like that.
I guess so in that, what has been your approach, I guess, with coaching boys and girls? Do you see any differences as you write your curriculum, even of like, oh, I know maybe this group will need more time on this or whatever? Like, what has just been your general philosophy?
Yeah, I've thought about that a little bit, especially lately as I've listened to some of the podcasts. And I think in general, I try to, it's kind of a weird mix. When I start off teaching anyone, I try to treat them all the same. I think it's important that you start off with a good baseline with, assuming everyone has the same capabilities. But also, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out each student individually, and whether they're male or female. I just kind of do my best to learn what kind of makes them tick, see what ways work to challenge them. And some of them respond to different kind of things. And it takes a while as a good coach to figure out how to push one kid, maybe by constantly acting unimpressed, which is what I do with some of my students. And then some of the other ones, I'm just super encouraging anytime they get any little thing. It's definitely a little bit tricky, and it takes a long time to develop those relationships. But I think it's just down to the individual, whether they are male or female. And I will say that most of the time with females, I would say, kind of as a general way of approaching them, it usually does. I can just communicate a little bit better with them, I've noticed. They take the time to listen, especially like when you compare it to younger boys. They are just super excited and ready to try it over and over and over. And they sometimes don't really fully listen to what you have to say before they jump back on it. But most of the time with the girls, they do stop and pay more attention and listen to try to make those corrections. And I think any gymnastics coach would probably kind of agree with that. It's sort of it's almost like a stereotype. I don't know if that's the right word, but if you ever taught gymnastics, you know that the boys' classes are always rambunctious and kind of wild. And if you've taught girls, then you know that they're a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, some of that might even just be like emotional maturity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that's something that girls, as far as communication goes, or like being aware of their own, maybe not completely in control of their own emotions at a young age, but more aware of their emotions.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case.
Yeah. Have you noticed anything as you're coaching of just like seeing a certain point in age where you start to see differences in skill levels split off, whether it's like puberty, if as physiological differences come into play? Like, do you notice a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there usually is a difference, especially, I guess right now, because our gym is starting off a little bit, we're sort of new in our gym. And I've seen it in different places, but with our gym, because we're new and the community in our area is new.
It's like everyone is starting from scratch at Motive. There's not a ninja community yet there. So right now, like across the genders, no one's really developed any kind of skills unless they're in the classes and they're just starting to learn them, because no one is like a veteran yet in Greenville or experienced in any way, boys and girls alike. So it's kind of cool. It's like a total blank slate and a fresh start for both genders in this city.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's interesting though too, because it's like, how do you think about then approaching it even from their mindset aspect? Like, are you finding that girls who are brand new are like, I want to do this, but I don't really know if I can, or do they seem just excited and like gung ho to do it?
Yeah, I do think that the age comes into play a lot with those different attitudes because, especially with older women compared to young girls, you really see a lot of apprehension. They've kind of learned to be a little more uncomfortable if they're older because they're
Mm-hmm.
more worried and self conscious about failing. And usually, with some of the younger girls I teach, maybe around 10 or 11, 12, they're pretty confident and they're not as worried about failing, and they're just there to try it and try to improve. And honestly, they do as well or better than a lot of my boys. Most of my best athletes right now are young women. So it is interesting to see. And I think as they get a little bit older, some of the guys might start to develop a little bit faster and maybe be a little bit stronger with a little less effort. But if those girls just stick with it, they're going to easily be able to hang with them.
Yeah, that's exactly like a topic that's come up a lot as I've been talking to people and reading through some survey answers and things. It's like I've heard from girls who are teenagers who started ninja when they were 11 or 12 say that, in the beginning I was just as good as every other boy in the gym, and then
Yeah.
as we all started to get older, they saw how like the boys' strength seemed to excel quicker, or just like larger muscle mass, like faster, that sort of thing. One girl was saying like, I felt like, why am I all of a sudden sucking at everything? But it really
Yeah.
wasn't that. It was just that her skills had kind of plateaued a little bit. And it was
Yeah.
like the guys were gaining faster. And she said she realized that once she had stuck with it for a couple of years, oh, no, I am getting stronger. I am getting better. But it just seemed like the rate of acceleration was faster for the guys than the girls.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to consider, and maybe something that we as like coaches and people who've been watching it from the outside can kind of take into consideration to some point to try to help with that aspect that we might see it happening over and over again as a pattern, and that might really discourage some of the women who are really have a lot of potential. All of a sudden, like you're saying, they might not see themselves doing as well by comparison, and that could feel pretty bad. And we don't want them to feel bad. We want them to stick with it and make sure that they're doing their best to compare their own skills to where they were and not to where other people are. But at the same time, there's always some room for some friendly competition across genders. I know guys and girls love to kind of be like, challenging each other. And, there's the whole thing where it's not just strong for a girl, that whole mindset. I think it really is pretty empowering when the girls are beating the guys. So I don't know. It's a very tricky balance to make sure that you can kind of work those two concepts in together.
Actually, I got a pretty sad email last night. It was one of the moms. She has 3 kids in our programs. They're all in classes, and they all had an open gym membership. And there's a girl who's in our 10 to 12 parkour program who has 2 older brothers, a 15 and a 16-year-old, and they're both in the ninja program. And when they come to open gym, she kind of hangs out with her older brothers, and they do Ninja Warrior. And their mom just emailed me last night and said they wanted to drop the girls' open gym membership because she was getting too frustrated and she wasn't having a good time in there with her brothers. And it made me really wish that I had kind of taken her aside in open gym, introduced her to some other girls, or at least just done some parkour with her, because that was actually more her discipline over ninja. But now she's kind of dropped out of that, and she'll still come to classes, but it really made me pretty sad and disappointed that we kind of didn't see that happening and then kind of help her out in open gym before she got too discouraged and quit. So
Yeah, and I do think, especially from that story, I had no idea before we started recording, but it's literally echoing other stories I've heard of girls saying that like they can look back, or even coaches who can look back at teams they've worked with in different sports and things, who have said like, yeah, they've noticed that period of time where it does seem like the girls feel like they're struggling when they're comparing themselves to the guys, because of all of a sudden they went from being a child or like a preteen, and then when they hit puberty, like the biological differences kind of like started to kick in, and guys were just excelling in a different way. And so I think that everything you're saying is so important. Like, how do we be aware of this? And as coaches, like, how can we be aware of how to continue to encourage both genders and continue to teach them and allow them to, you know, compete together, do all these things together, which can be beneficial, but also addressing different gender needs that might come up, and trying to like help girls not get discouraged by just comparing themselves.
Yeah, I think comparing yourself is unhealthy in so many aspects of life, not just in sports. But one of the things I've loved about Ninja Warrior is I've seen so many people that do it, not to be elite. Before the Ninja Leagues existed and most of the competition only happened on the TV show, I always loved seeing people come in the gym and practice Ninja Warrior and parkour, like not without the intention of getting on the show, but just because they thought it was fun. And I feel like we've lost a little bit of that with all of the local competitions and leagues, because now there's so much more competition all around us outside the show. And so it has become so competitive, but I'd love to see people still just be like, yes, so like, okay, I'm not maybe as good as them, but like, that's not the reason I do it necessarily, you know, just like have fun and do it because you like it, because it keeps you fit and it makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like, how can we encourage anyone, but, you know, girls and women especially, how can we encourage them to be proud of their own strength and their own accomplishment, without feeling like, oh, but if it's not as good as this other person, then it's really not.
There's no reason to do
strong.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just the mentality of, oh, that was a good job for a girl, like
Yeah.
in a negative way. Like, how do we get past that, even as like an entire community? Because I know there's been times even at big competitions and stuff where some girls have, or women in general, have felt like a certain way about people making a big deal about, oh, this girl got this obstacle for the first time and that was really good for the women. Like, we should be proud of these accomplishments, but how does it
Yeah.
not also feel like a diss at the same time? Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'll never forget one of the seasons a few years ago, you know, the skills challenges on Ninja Warrior where they do like the super salmon ladder and the, you know, who can lâcher the farthest and things like that. And the first year they did it, they had women and men together. I think they had at least one girl on each of the obstacles in the skills challenge. And then the following year, they decided to make it all for men and then just have like one of them for the girls. And it was going to be all girls on it. And the producers had a pretty heavy discussion in a hotel room with some of the top ninja athletes because they were extremely upset about it. And the producer was so surprised. Like, I thought you guys would like this. So you're not always getting beat by the boys. And they were just like, no, like we want to try to beat the boys. And like, even if we can't, like second place is fine. Or just the fact that we're even doing it alongside them, like, is what we prefer.
Yeah, and I think that kind of brings back up that concept of the individual. You know, for a lot of people, for most people, I'd say, if you're not doing great at something, and you were at one point, especially, you're gonna start feeling bad. You're like, well, I was good at this, and now I'm not anymore, and that doesn't feel real good. So then you're gonna be discouraged. But some people, and it's probably the case with most of our top female and male athletes, when they start getting beat by somebody, they just push even harder and try even harder. But unfortunately, you know, it's not the same for every single person. So again, it's just down to the individual and how they feel and how they react.
Yeah, definitely. But again, like, not to like go in circles, but again, I feel like then it's up to us who are coaches or parents or friends to be able to help guide people in that mindset of, oh, wait, like, don't get caught up in the fact that this person's now beating you, or you feel like your skills are plateauing or whatever it is. Like, learn how to overcome that, or learn how to train better, or learn, you know, just, or realize that other people might beat you. Like, how can I focus on my own skills and excel in my own strength?
Right.
Oh, just a sec. It's summer. Warmer months are here. Do you have a refreshing drink to keep you hydrated during your workouts? Blending up some PropelloLife amino acids with ice before a workout is the perfect way to hydrate. It's what I've been doing in these warmer days, and I love it. It's the best way to fuel up before getting into a sweaty summer workout. Then after I've worked hard and need to refuel for optimal gains, I drink PropelloLife protein. It's non-GMO, tastes great in chocolate or vanilla, and its whey is from grass-fed cows with no additives or chemicals. I know I'm getting great nutrition and refueling the way that my body needs. Ninjababes, PropelloLife has the drinks for you. And best of all, you can use code Ninjababes, all caps, for 10% off your order, free shipping, and it's a way to support the Ninjababes podcast. So go ahead and see all the whey and vegan options for pre-workout, energy, amino acids, and protein at PropelloLife.com. The link is in the show notes. In Ninja, we have a super open mindset and always encouraging the girls, like always being part of our community in general and like being together. Do you feel like there's ways that you've maybe seen how pushing girls one way in coaching, like encouraging them one way to like go after certain obstacles or whatever, you've seen them break past limitations that maybe other people might have assumed, oh, that's too hard for a girl, or like a girls can't get that many pull-ups or like whatever it is. Like, have you seen girls that you've worked with before like break through some of those limitations?
Yeah, I think I see that a lot of times. Mostly it's a generational thing. Like, I think we mentioned this before, but like usually with someone, older females, they just think that things are impossible for them. And then with younger females, they seem to have less of that mindset. Maybe it's just because of how they've grown up watching more women be successful. I had a girl in the gym the other day who was working on, I think, the flywheels in our gym. And I mean, she got it faster than pretty much any other student I've had. It was her first time trying it. She hopped up and like tried it like 3 times. And then by her like 4th time, she like figured out the technique. And I mean, she did it like 20 more times after that because she was just determined. She didn't care that she was failing. And I think that's very encouraging to see. Her mom was there watching. She was super proud, of course. But I do think that most of the time people will see women as not having, they'll be more impressed by them, I think. And that's great because then they're more encouraging to them. But at the same time, in some ways that can sort of be a negative thing.
Yeah, I did have a friend of mine. It's a little
different, but
it's a little different, but it kind of makes you understand. I had a friend of mine. We were out climbing outdoors with her son, and her son was, I think, 10 or 11 at the time. And he kind of didn't want to be there, but we sort of made him anyway. And then we like made him climb this route. And as he's like getting halfway up, we're just being overly encouraging because we want him to have a positive time and keep doing it. So we're just like, yeah, you can do this. You're doing great. Come on. And he got so upset and he just quit. And he was like, please stop. You're making me feel embarrassed because when you're really like, when you're cheering me on, it makes me know that you think that I couldn't do it or something like that. And in his like 10-year-old way, he explained exactly how so many women feel when they're over encouraged and people are over impressed, and that it's because they thought that you couldn't do it to begin with.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those things that, I kind of hate to see it when people are like, especially guys are talking to a girl and they're like, man, I can't believe you got that. I couldn't even get that. Oh. And they don't even think about it being like potentially offensive. And the guys definitely don't mean it in an offensive way. It's just there's a little bit of a disconnect there between how each sex kind of views that emotionally. It's a little bit hard to figure it out. But I think just talking to women about it and understanding that, don't be overly impressed when a woman can do what you can do. They can do it too.
Yeah, there's definitely been times at the climbing gym where like, I've gotten a boulder problem and some guy who has no idea like how hard I climb, they don't know me at all, will say, wow, I can't even do that. And I'm like, well, do you climb V6? Like, and they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, that's why you can't. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what, you don't know what to say. Like,
and a guy would never say that to me, climbing in a gym.
Right.
And also guys never encourage me as strangers. It's like, oh, that was great. I can't believe you got that. Like, when a guy's climbing, it's like, oh, cool, good job. But,
right.
It's just different. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point. And not to say that like, it's the same thing. Like I talk to my fiance about this sometimes. It's like, I don't want you to not open the door for me, right? I don't want you to not treat me with respect, but you don't need to be like, oh, you can't do this. Like you're feeble, let me open the door for you. There's a difference between
sure.
Yeah, so of course I don't want any guy who's listening to come away from this being like, oh, they don't even want us to like encourage them. Like, no.
Yeah.
Of course I want you to encourage us, but it's more so to your point of like, oh, good job, you tied your shoes. You know what I mean? It's like, are you treating me like a child who like is incapable of doing anything? Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was I'd shared this story on the podcast like 2 weeks ago, I think, but it's same example. I was at like the regular strength gym and I was doing a set of pull-ups and I was going for a PR at the time. I was shooting for like 23 or 22. And
I remember this story, I think.
Yeah, I was doing pull-ups. There's only one pull-up bar in that gym and it's on a squat rack. And so I was kind of like in the middle of where a bunch of other dudes were. I wasn't trying to like, that's the only place. Like I wanted to do my pull-ups. Yeah. That's where I had to be. Yeah. And so I just hopped up on the bar. I was like, hey, could I cut in for a second? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I got to pull up number 7 and I'm, still just going. And he was like, wow, you're doing really good. And I was like,
yeah, you're like, you have no idea.
I started to get, I was like, like keep watching. Like in my brain, I was like, keep watching because I'm definitely aiming for at least like 20 or 22. And so I just kept going. And he like literally called the buddy over and he was like, look at this girl. I can't believe it. And I was like, I was starting to just get angry. And like, that's my internal reaction is I just get really angry. Yeah. And I'm just like, you don't understand. And you're acting like this is the craziest thing you've ever seen. And like, yeah, I'm proud that I'm strong.
You just want it to be more normal.
Yeah. Just like, let me jump down from the bar after I finish and like give me a pound and be like, nice job.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
Thank you.
And I've definitely had men actually literally say things about how, wow, some men I know can't even do that. Right. I've had a guy tell me that before, and it wasn't related to athleticism. I was just strapping something down in our truck. I was like, bought something big, and I was strapping it down with some ratchet straps. And he said, oh, you know how to use those? I know some men that can't even use ratchet straps. And I thought, what? Wow, you mean I can do something that some men can't even do? Like, I didn't say that, but I just thought, what a dumb comment.
Yeah, I would say on the opposite side of that too, though, it's tricky sometimes as a guy who I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of those guys watching you do a bunch of pull-ups. Those guys have probably not ever really seen a lot of really strong women do a lot of pull-ups.
Right.
And so, they probably don't realize how it comes across. And they probably think they're being complimentary. And I think that's one of the things that's a little bit hard to navigate as a man viewing strong women. It's like, all right, how much can I give them compliments and act impressed and generally, actually be impressed? And, and if I do that and it offends them, like, then it's a little confusing in a way. And I understand it, but it can be a little bit tricky sometimes, like where that line is.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're saying that. Because I get it. And especially when you say it that way, it's like, oh yeah, they probably just have literally never seen it. And so they're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend who's listening to the podcast and him and his wife aren't really involved with fitness much at all. And he was saying, if I like said to my wife, like, I'm not going to move that heavy thing for you. I'm not going to pick it up. Like you could do it yourself. Like she would be really offended and she'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I need help. Like, I would really like you to do this. And it would feel like disrespectful. Whereas, I want to be able to feel like I'm trusted and respected enough, like by my partner that like I can move heavy things. Like, of course he wants to help me and he's not going to like make me do it all myself. But like, it is kind of like if you're coming from this fitness background where you are proud of being capable and you're proud of being able to do stuff, then it does feel offensive when you feel like people are belittling that in you. But if that's not what your background is, if you're not training like we are, it's going to feel the exact opposite. It'll feel disrespectful to like not be helped or not be like put in that position.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just tricky. And I mean, I've said this a couple of times, but it does a lot of times always just come back to that individual mentality of, like in Grace's super easy beginner women's workshop class. I mean, most of those women who are not used to doing stuff, they need a little extra encouragement because they feel a little uncomfortable in those situations. So yeah, it's just tricky. You need to feel it out. Don't just to make assumptions about a person. Talk to them and see what they're about before you just start, talking one way or another to them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it all just comes down to like, how can we respect one another? How can we not make assumptions about people? But also, how can we like, for the women, like sometimes just lower our defenses a little bit? Because I know that sometimes I just get
Oh
mad because I know like what my experience has been, and it just kind of builds
yeah.
upon
Yes.
itself.
Yeah, every time I walk in the hardware store, literally, even this morning, I'm walking in trying to calm myself down and prepare for the comments I might get because every time I've gone, or so many of the times I've gone, I've heard the most ridiculous comments. And it fires me up so much that I'm expecting it and I'm totally on the
hmm
defense every time I walk in. And I'm like, okay, Grace, let's be polite and nice. But even I had a guy call me sweetheart today, and I was just like, I don't like that. Like, but anyways, yeah, definitely lowering our defenses is might make us a little more open to actual conversations and getting across to the men like how we feel without just coming across as like a total
Right.
dick.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I could find stories to say like all day long, but there's another story that happened to me like about a year and a half ago. Before I had my new car, I had an old car that was like constantly having issues. And when I brought it into the shop, I on purpose, like when I know I'm going to a place that's probably like a heavily male environment who are not like my ninja friends, who are like other dudes that I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, I honestly sometimes will make sure I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt because otherwise I
Dress like
always I
very,
always
yeah,
get comments about my arms. And so
yeah.
when I had gone to the car shop, I was wearing a long sleeve shirt on purpose, even though it was like warm out. And he eventually ended up asking me something that like led to the conversation of Ninja Warrior. And he was like, "Oh, that's cool that you work for them or something." And I was like, "Wait, no, I compete with Ninja." And he gave me this look and he was like, what do you do? And I was like, I compete for Ninja. And he's like, oh, so you've like helped out? I was like, no. And I literally had to like show him a video and he was like, you do that stuff?
Yeah.
And he was like, wait. And he
Yeah,
literally was
right.
like, wait, let me see. And he like went to grab my bicep.
Yeah.
He was like, let me see your arms. And I
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
Right.
it was just weird, but I was like, ah,
Yeah.
he just, it took him literally like several questions to understand that I personally, as myself, yes, I compete on American Ninja Warrior. And it's just like that
Right.
mentality of like, you can do that. I'm like, yes, like I know it is
Yeah.
a big amazing thing. Like I know that ninja, not everyone can do ninja. I get it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
But I do. Well, I think that, like, to one of the points that Mary made in one of the previous podcasts about just normalizing it more, like, basically just, she was saying, make sure you post your videos. Like, let's make this not so exceptional. And I've been saying that to the women in my classes. Every time we finish a class, I'm like, okay, we're going to do a course run and we're all going to, like, film it and we're all going to post it. And all our friends are going to see it. And the more they see it, like, the less crazy it's going to be that like women do this. So I think that that's going to help a lot with people just being surprised.
definitely. Yeah, I agree. Just like getting it out there more, and the less that we're like an oddity, the more like people will understand that yeah, there's a lot of women who can be strong.
Yeah, that'll help in itself, just them not being so surprised and not it being such an exception.
Yeah. Brett, you had already given some of the guys some advice even or helping me and Grace actually have some better understanding about the guy's perspective of how guys might just not realize that yeah, there are a lot of girls out there who are strong and guys might be surprised even when they find a woman who's strong and they haven't seen that before. Is there any advice that you might have for guys listening to help them better understand what a woman's experience is even in the ninja world, how like we want to be respected, we want to be encouraged, but we don't want to feel like our strength is like something weird that has to be like gawked at, you know? Do you have any other advice for male coaches who are working with girls or just any of the dudes listening in general who might be like trying to understand this topic better?
I feel like I don't struggle with that too much. I think having Grace to talk to about some of it has been helpful. We will have discussions sometimes about how things are perceived from both perspectives. So sometimes you can just talk to friends of yours that you know and ask them, how they think the things you're doing are perceived, and that can be pretty helpful. But for me, I just always view each person with, I try to keep in mind that everybody has a lot of potential, and I try to get rid of any bias I might have, whether they're, it doesn't matter where they're coming from.
I mean, I will say one of the reasons I married this hunk right here is because he never ever treated me any different. Well, okay, he treated me different than a guy, but as far as just like being confident in my abilities and stuff, I feel like he's never treated me any less than he would one of his male counterparts, because he's all like, we've been doing the house renovation together, we've opened a business together, we always get each other's advice. Like he'll, if he's going to make something, build something, he might come and like ask my advice for it and get my opinion on it. And I've always felt very valued, which I think is extremely important. And I know that that's sort of unique. Like all girls don't have that privilege from their husbands and their male friends, that they get like, I guess, so much respect and trust, and I don't know, like from other guys. So it helps me feel confident too. And I guess I'm just speaking for Brent, that you're good at that. Like that's just something that you're good at. Is you just like don't assume that I know less than you, or you don't assume that I wouldn't have an opinion on something that's typically like a male dominated thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what Grace said. Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
Like asking my opinion, it makes me feel valuable, Like I ask women their opinions. Like ask them how they thought the course was. Like, did they think it was a good course? Was there something they would have liked to see more or less of? Like just get opinions from girls because they have them.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Before we move on totally, there was one other thing I wanted to say that I kind of keep in my head. So one thing I try to take into consideration when coaching girls in the gym, there's always the likelihood that I could be coaching like the next top female athlete. I have to consider that could be a possibility. And the top female athletes in our sport are better than probably 90% of male athletes who do Ninja Warrior. And so to assume that the female that I'm coaching doesn't have the ability to do everything that all the guys in the class are doing would be kind of ridiculous and unfair. So I always try to give males and females the same benefit of the doubt. I never assume that they're not going to be the strongest one. So everybody has potential, and it's not my job to assume that they're not going to be the best. It's my job to make them the best they can be.
I think that's such an interesting perspective about, you never know, like there might be that one girl in this class that's going to eventually be able to beat all the guys, or like be right head to head with the best. Like it's so true. And I think that's really an interesting perspective to keep in your back pocket of like, yeah, why would I treat any of them differently why would I prejudge and not realize that I might have some gem of potential right before me? And I so appreciate just the two of you being on today and being able to talk about what you've seen and your experience. And it's cool to talk to you as a married couple and also as like ninjas and regular people too.
Be strong. Be you.
Be a ninja babe.